Everyone keeps asking the wrong question. Why would poor Americans vote for a billionaire? When you look closely at the data, the real mystery isn't why they supported him. It's how Donald Trump managed to stop looking like an elite to them at all. He turned himself into a champion of the forgotten, a man who gets it, a billionaire who somehow feels anti-elite. Poor Americans didn't vote for his wealth. They voted for the story he told them. A story about being overlooked, disrespected, and replaced, and a promise that he was the only one willing to fight for them. So the real question isn't why poor people voted for Trump, it's how he made them forget he was rich to begin with. Trump voters weren't all poor. In 2016 and 2020, the median income of Trump voters was higher than that of Clinton or Biden voters, according to multiple post-election analysis by political scientists and outlets. But the poorest counties in America, overwhelmingly rural, white, and low education, went to Trump by huge margins. He didn't win poor people, he won poor places. And inside those places, his strongest support came from what sociologist Ali Hochschild calls the elite of the left behind. People who weren't destitute personally, but lived in towns collapsing around them. This is why the vote against your own interest narrative doesn't exactly describe the situation. People weren't voting from their bank accounts. They were voting from their landscape, a landscape that had been dying for decades. What actually happened to rural America? Most of America missed it, but long before Trump, rural America was experiencing a slow-motion collapse. Here's the data. Between 2001 and 2015, manufacturing employment fell by close to 30% in the US. Deaths of despair, suicide, overdose, alcoholism surged. In 2016, research found Trump did best in areas with the highest death rates from drugs, alcohol, and suicide. So this wasn't just poverty, this was erosion. Economic erosion, social, civic, and emotional. Entire towns lost their factories, their young people, their newspapers, their hospitals, their sense of future. So by 2016, when Trump arrived promising to fight for forgotten Americans, rural voters didn't just hear a candidate. What they heard was recognition. One of the most important studies of the 2016 election by political scientist Diana Moots has a blunt title. Status Threat, Not Economic Hardship, explains the 2016 presidential vote. She found that white, Christian, male voters who felt their group status was slipping were more likely to switch from Obama to Trump. Figures, you know? Feeling that the American way of life is under threat strongly predicted Trump support. Negative views on immigration and trade were less about personal job loss and more about a group position and national dominance. But, you know, this wasn't about personal finances. It was about identity survival and racism. Trump wasn't selling tax cuts. He was selling reassurance that the America that they remember wasn't disappearing, or at least that he'd fight the people they blamed. To really understand rural voters, you have to talk about Catherine Kramer's work on rural consciousness. From her book, The Politics of Resentment, she finds 3 core beliefs. We work harder than city people. Cities get more resources, respect, and political power. Elites look down on people like us. Whether these beliefs are factually true or not doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter. Because they feel true. And nothing fuels political loyalty like feeling understood. Trump and his team leaned into this with surgical precision. He mocked elites, attacked journalists, blasted professors and experts, ridiculed political correctness, validated rural frustration. While Democrats toured rural towns with policy binders, Trump said things like, "They're laughing at you. They betrayed you. I hear you." He wasn't offering any plans. He was offering dignity. At such a cost to everyone else though. Sorry, back to the data. I'm trying to be legit today. Communication scholar Roderick Hart has called Trump an emotional revolutionary for a reason. His power comes from how he talks, not what he says. He doesn't communicate through policy, he communicates through emotion. Anger, hurt, bravado, victimhood, dominance, humor, loyalty, resentment. This style, chaotic and simple and repetitive, feels authentic to voters who distrust polished elites. Let's call it what it is. He speaks at a very low reading level.
America will no longer settle for anything less than the best.
He repeats phrases endlessly.
I won't say he was an older fellow, but he was an older fellow.
I'm not going to say anybody didn't do well. They didn't do well.
He performs anger and triumph like a professional wrestler.
That's enough. Put down the mic.
To urban elites and people who can read, it sounds completely unhinged. But to these rural voters, it sounds real. This is the strangest part though. Trump is an elite, but his voters don't see him as one. Why? Well, number one, elites equal cultural class, not necessarily money. To many rural Americans, elite doesn't mean rich. It means degree holders, journalists, scientists, tech workers, urban professionals, academics, and the media, bureaucrats. Trump has money, but he doesn't have their mannerisms, their language, or their values. Number two, aspirational alignment. People struggling financially often admire wealth if it feels earned or relatable. Trump's flashy wealth feels like fantasy, not oppression. He's the billionaire who eats fast food and screams on TV and hates the media and sounds like your weird, crazy uncle on Facebook. He's not above you. He's what you'd be like if you won the lottery. Number three, the protector archetype. Voters project onto Trump the role of the strong man who protects us from elites. He's not scared to call them mean names. That psychological role overrides material contradictions. The part nobody wants to talk about. Let's be honest. Race is one of the biggest forces in this story, but not necessarily in the cartoonish way we often talk about it, like they're racist. It's a bit more complicated and more revealing. For many poor rural whites, life genuinely feels hard. Factories closed, wages stagnant, addiction everywhere. So when they're told Black and brown Americans have it worse, you have white privilege, they sometimes hear instead, you don't matter. Empathy becomes a zero-sum game. A lack of education equals a lack of historical awareness. They only know what's in front of them. If you never learned about systemic racism and you've never lived near diverse communities and your school doesn't even teach history and you only ever get taught the Bible and your town has been declining for decades, then privilege feels like an insult, not a social fact. Racial isolation intensifies status threat. The most pro-Trump areas were overwhelmingly white and geographically isolated, with very, very little day-to-day contact with immigrants or any racial minorities. Authoritarianism thrives where education is low. Decades of political psychology research link lower education to higher authoritarian tendencies, a preference for stability, simplicity, order, hierarchy, a strongman protector. That is Trump's brand. So, did Trump's policies help these communities? Short answer, no, not really. Shocker. Let's break it down. Number one, manufacturing jobs. Trump promised to revive manufacturing. Manufacturing jobs did rise in 2017 and 2018. But from January 2019 to February 2020, the US actually lost about 48,000 manufacturing jobs even before COVID hit. Independent analysis found that Trump's tariffs reduced overall manufacturing employment by raising input costs and provoking retaliation. Number two, rural poverty. Rural poverty rates remained consistently higher than urban poverty throughout Trump's term, and economic gaps by geography persisted. Number three, rural healthcare. Trump and congressional Republicans repeatedly tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act, including Medicaid expansion, a program that disproportionately benefited poor and rural Americans by keeping hospitals open and expanding coverage. Multiple rural health policy analysis warned that repeal would trigger waves of rural hospital closures and leave millions uninsured. So objectively, the Trump years didn't reverse rural decline at all. But emotionally, Trump still felt like he was fighting for them. And emotional politics outweigh material politics, like we talked about before. Why loyalty survives the facts. Even when Trump's policies hurt poor voters, they often say,
and that's what Trump's trying to do. He's fighting for us, and that's why we support him, 100%.
He's helping people like us. This is motivated reasoning. When identity outruns facts. Supporters assume cuts will hurt other people, not them. Corruption charges are lies made by elites. Any failure is sabotaged by Democrats or the deep state. Trump's intentions prove his loyalty, not his results. That is why fact-checking doesn't move them. You're not arguing policy, you're arguing identity. From symptoms to solutions. You can't fix this with educating voters or better messaging. This is a structural problem and an emotional one. Here's what actually matters. Number one, material investment in rural communities. Legit, tangible things like broadband, healthcare, infrastructure, vocational training and apprenticeships, small town revitalization, serious planning for post-manufacturing economies. Number two, cultural respect. This may sound crazy, but rural voters need to feel seen and not shamed. That doesn't mean validating harmful or racist beliefs, not at all. It means acknowledging their experience without condescension. Number three, cross-racial working class coalition. Groups like the Poor People's Campaign have argued that poor and low-income voters across race are a potential sleeping giant if mobilized around shared material interests. It is not easy. It's not easy. But it's one of the few ways out of politics built on resentment. Poor people didn't vote Trump because they're poor. They voted for him because their towns collapsed. Elites mocked them. Their identity felt threatened. Their future felt stolen. And a billionaire showed up speaking their emotional language. In the end, Trump didn't win their money. He won their recognition. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit subscribe. I'm also interested to see what you think. This is all based on data and research that I did, but you might know more. You might have been to one of these places. Here on Channel 100 News, we dig into psychology, the history, and the messy human stuff behind headlines because literally none of this happens in a vacuum. Check out my deep dive into why white women voted Trump. It's pretty crazy, quite interesting. Bye!